When we are building web pages, there are two distinct places that we need to be available to use. When we want to make changes or to add content, we do that in a plain text editor. And here you see the work that we've done in previous videos where we created the content, and then here's the other one where after the HTML has been added. And so in both of these cases, we've done this typing and this work in a plain text editor. But ultimately, we want to be able to see it in a browser. So we need to be able to open it up in both places, both in the plain text editor and in the browser. To open a file, a local file, okay, so this page is not published. This is just available on my own computer in my own file system. And so to view that, I can still use a regular browser. And the way that I do that is I just simply go to it and do Control-O, and it asks me to find the file. And you just browse to where it is. Now you need to know where the file is. That's why I'm pretty fussy about create a folder. Put it where you know where it is, because you need to be able to find those files from different places. So always pay attention to where you're storing your files and keep all of the files for a web page together in one location. So use Control-O unless you're using a Mac. If you're using a Mac, then do Command-O, and it'll bring up this browser window. And then simply double-click on the page that you want to open. Here's what the content looks like, right? This is just when we have the content. We have no HTML. Because it's a .html file, the browser gets rid of all the white space. Any carriage returns, tabs, extra lines, it replaces those with a single space. So you get this, all the content bunched up together. So you wait on, see, this really doesn't look like a web page. This is everything just all mushed up together. That's what we expect when we're looking at our content file. Once we add HTML, then it looks quite a bit different. Here's our HTML file in the editor, right? And now we're going to also open it in the browser. I'm just going to open a new tab, click Control-O. Remember, that's Command-O if you're using a Mac machine. And then I double click on that file. And now that I've added HTML, it looks different. Now we see the heading, the images actually show up, the links actually work. If I click on that, it will open that link. Okay, there it is. So the links actually work. Here the list displays those numbers, right? When we do the HTML, we don't include the numbers, but the browser, when it interprets those list items, it puts the numbers in front of them. Again, images, headings, all of these display. Here's our graphic link. Notice how this is an image, and when we hover over it, the cursor turns to a hand, demonstrating that this is a link, so I can click on that. Notice I'm using my middle click to be able to do that, so it's opening in another window. And then here's the table. So notice that the table is there and everything's in the right columns, but there's no borders. So when we're doing HTML, so once we add the HTML, it just makes the table big enough to hold the content, so their columns are as wide as the largest content, which are those headings. There's no borders. So that's something, the borders and the sizing of those tables will be something that we'll add when we get to doing style. Notice how the images are all different sizes, right? They're about the same size, about the right size, but maybe not quite what we want. Again, sizing is something we will add when we get to style. So as you're doing your work, you can look at your work in the browser. Notice if I try to type though, if I try to type on it, I can make no changes in the browser. The browser just displays it. So if I want to make a change, I've got to go over to the content. So let's make a change here. If I say the scientific method, I'll say the new scientific method, and I go over here, and what I have to do, there's two things I have to do. I have to type it in here and then save it. So I type it and then I save in the editor, and then I go over and refresh it in the browser. And that's how you make changes. So remember how to open it in the text editor where you make changes, and in the browser where you see how those changes work.